I love the pianos on the Montage. Today we're going to be talking about how to put chords on individual key presses. This has been one of the most requested comments I've received is, hey, how do I make it so that I can play individual chords just by pressing one key? Coming up. So I'm guessing the reason that I'm being asked this over and over again is that people want to be able to play chord progressions on their Montage or their MODX, but they only want to do it just by pressing a single key, kind of like an arranger would. So you would get with one key press, and then this with another key press, and that with another key press, and then whatever. So you get a chord progression happening just by doing, for instance, this. And that would be what you would play, but you would get the actual chords playing. So I thought, okay, well, yeah, we could do this with, let me think, with an arpeggio. If we had different parts set up with a key mapping for one part per key, and then have different user arpeggios, each one playing a different chord. But that's complex, because then we have to set up sequences and convert those to user arpeggios, and then link those into the individual parts, and then each of those would use up one of your user arpeggios, and you only got 128 of them in the whole synthesizer. So I thought, well, you know what, maybe I'm thinking too hard about this. There's a way simpler way of doing this, and that is simply by assigning different elements in a part different notes. And we can have all those elements even have different sounds if we want, so that we could have multiple different sounds playing the chords. So let's have a look at how we would go about doing that. Okay, I did say this is going to be simple, so we will start with a init patch, and let's do it AWM2, because we're going to be playing a bunch of different sounds. So here's our init patch, and we are going to go into the first one, and of course it defaults to a piano, but we're not going to keep that. It's also very dry piano. So we need to have a look at the elements for this. Before we do that, I want to mention that in the Montage M, we can have more than 8 elements. On the original Montage and the MODX, you can have 8 elements per part. And that is what this has by default. If you see, we can go in here, we have 8 elements. However, if we go into the element settings, we can turn on the extra element switch, and now we can have up to 128 elements per part. You can't do that on the older Montage or the MODX, but it helps us here because we can have all our chords that we're going to be playing, this whole chord progression, on a single part. Whereas if we had, for instance, 4-part chords, we can only fit 2 different chords on an individual part because we only have 8 elements to work with. So let's say we're going to have, 16, why not? So we'll do some 4-note chords for this. So we're going to use up 16 of our elements. So let's start by going to element 1, and what are we going to use in here? We are going to search for, let's say, pad. Let's make this out of some pads. And in fact, you know what, before we do that, let's actually make this a little more complex so that our chords are going to have a bass part and a pad part. So the bass, let's see what we're going to use. We're going to say a synth bass. Let's see, what can we use for a bass? That's fine, analog bass, that's going to be our bass part. So the first thing we're going to do is limit the notes that are going to activate this element. So we'll say the lowest one is going to be this, and the highest one is going to be the same thing. So now this sound will only be activated by this key right at the very end here. We want to change the pitch per key from 100 down to 0. This means no matter what key we press, it's only going to play the center key. So if we turn that off, so now you can see it's actually playing a C3. Let's turn that down to a, that's better for a bass sound. So there's the first note of our chord. It's going to be a C1. Now we go into element 2, and this is where we're going to use our pads. So let's do a category search once again. We're going to look for some pads, some string sounds. How about a medium detuned pad? That should sound good. And for the element note, we're going to do the exact same thing. And pitch is going to go down to 0. The pitch key is how much the different pitches on the keyboard affect the note that we're playing. We don't want the different keys because we don't. This is a E that we're playing down here, but we don't want it to play an E. We want to play just this note here. So let's make this a C3. Why not? Make sure we turn it on so we hear it. Okay, so here is our first note of our pad. All right, so there's our first note, and what we're going to do now is we're going to hit Shift Edit, and we will copy element 2 to element 3. And while we're at it, we're going to do another Shift Edit, and we're going to copy it into element 4 as well. Okay, so now 1 is our bass, 2, 3, and 4 are our pad sounds, which is going to be very loud because we've got 3 elements playing the same thing. But let's change that. Element 3, now we're going to make that into an E, why not? And then element 4 will be our C, so we now have a C major chord. So there is our first chord, which is a C major with a bass below it. So now we're going to go to element 1 again, and we'll just copy these. So again, Shift Edit, and we're going to copy this to element 5. Now that's our bass. Element 2 has a pad in it, so we're going to Shift Edit and copy that into element 6. Now, I'm not going to copy the other 2 because I want to make sure that we change our element note limits first. So we're going to go to element 5, and now we're going to change E0 to F0. And let's see, instead of a C1, it's going to be an F1. Element 6, once again, we're going to change our element note limits, and let's say that's going to be an F as well. So now we have element 6 set. We're going to do Shift Edit, copy that into 7. And we're also going to do Shift Edit and copy that into 8. So for element 7, what note should that be? How about, I don't know, A sharp. And then for element 8, what should that be? So now we have, there's 2 chords right there. Now we're going to go back to element 5, and once again we're going to Shift Edit. Now we're going to copy that into element 9. And then we can go to element 6, and we're going to Shift Edit, copy that to element 10. We'll go up to element 9. We're going to change this to the G, so that's going to be actuated when we hit the G. And, well, let's make it play a G. And then element 10, again, we want to make that play on a G, and we'll make that play a G. So here's our G. Element 10, we then want to copy that into element 11, as well as into element 12. So for element 11, what note do we want? And then for element 12, what note do we want there? That sounds good. So now here's our 3 notes. And lastly, our 4th note of our 4-note progression. So we'll go back to element 9, which is our root note, and we're going to Shift Edit, copy that to, what was it? Was it 13? 13, I think it was. And then we will go to element 10 and Shift Edit, copy that to 14. And now we'll go to element 13. We're going to change that G to an A. And let's, what's that? No, is it going to be an A? How about, okay, B flat, why not? I don't know what this chord progression is going to sound like, but hey, I'm just picking things at random at this point. And we're going to change this to an A on element 14. And what note's that going to play? Okay, B flat, A sharp, what have you. So now we're going to copy that to 15 and into 16. So for element 15, what note will it play? Why not? And then element 16, what's the note going to be? Good enough. Okay, so now we have our 4 chords mapped to the first 4 keys of the keyboard. Obviously, if you're going to be doing this, you know what chords you're going to be using in the first place, so you're going to pick 4 chords that actually sound good together and that you would play in a progression, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, it's just playing 4 random chords. But you can hear I've got a 3-note chord playing in strings and a bass synth underneath it. Now the nice thing about this is if we go back to the performance, this is still just one part. Now of course on a MODX or original Montage, we would have to use up 2 parts for this. We wouldn't be able to fit this all into one part because we only have 8 elements per part. So let's go back into the edit here and we can go maybe, ooh, how about the filter? Let's put some filter in this. And let's bring that across. And let's bring in some attack, actually a decay. If we bring the sustain down. And some envelope. Then we can add some effects in here if we want to turn on some delay. Or how about some reverb? Or chorus. I know, that's what we need. We need some chorus in here. So this is entirely just this one part. So if we add a new part in here, and that is going to be, who knows? Let's, how about a synth lead? That's our synth lead. So that took up 3 parts there. So we want to make sure that our keys that our part is engaging is not going to be these first 4 keys down here. So I'm going to start it at A sharp 0, and again A sharp 0, A sharp 0. That makes sure that the parts that we just added for the synth lead do not activate these parts down here and vice versa. So now we have our chord progression down here. And notice that the effects that we have on our chord progression on part 1 are completely separate than the effects on part 2, 3, and 4, which is our synth lead. So there you go. A 4-chord progression down on the bottom end played with just 4 keys, and a completely separate lead up on the top rest of the keyboard. Of course, we could add more parts and split the keyboard even more if we wanted to. That's a simple example of how you can set up chords on individual keys, and that's saved with the performance, and it does not use arpeggiators. So I'm going to save this. So we will store as a new performance, and we're going to call it Chord. Call it Chord on Key. I will put this up on my sound mondo, and I'll put a link to it in the description below. Unfortunately, the sound uses 16 elements on that one part, so it's not going to work on the regular Montage or MODX. But if you do have a Montage M, you can connect a sound mondo and load this directly into your Montage and play with it from there. All right, that's it. I hope this was of some use to you. I hope you learned something, and I hope this is something that you can use when you are playing your Montage or MODX. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you have 10 seconds, could I ask you to click like on this video and subscribe to the channel? I'm at 17,000-ish subscribers. I'd really like to get to 20,000, and that really would help me out if you could do that. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching.